relationship structure was nothing I had ever heard of. It was not a concept that was ever in my close sphere of life and living. My parents were monogamous, and all of my friends' parents were monogamous. And when someone felt something for someone else, it usually ended in them cheating and lying. This was all I knew growing up in relationships. And it wasn't until my divorce where I started to question if monogamy was the only way of being in relationship and if it was the best way for me. But if it wasn't monogamy, what else was there? Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from Soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. I was exposed to different lifestyles early in my life. As a child and preteen, I never really fit in with my peers. I struggled. I always felt older than my age and really uninterested in the things that my peers talked about. I much preferred to hang with the adults. The conversations were more interesting, and I loved soaking up and soaking in what I felt like it was to be an adult. I was in love with theater and performing from the time I was 7 years old. I performed professionally, beginning at age 12, working in dinner theater productions. It was here that I was first exposed to homosexuality. I had a huge crush on one guy in particular, and someone told me that he was figuring out if he liked boys or girls. This was fascinating to me, and not just because of the sexual identity diversity, but because it was just people figuring out who they were, the joy of them figuring out, and the freedom to figure out who they were. I loved it because it wasn't a big deal. It was just people living their lives and going deeper into their identity. Now, relationship structure, on the other hand, was nothing I had ever heard of. It was not a concept that was ever in my close sphere of life and living. My parents were monogamous, and all of my friends' parents were monogamous. And when someone felt something for someone else, it usually ended in them cheating and lying. This was all I knew growing up in relationships. And it wasn't until my divorce in 2004 where I started to question if monogamy was the only way of being in relationship and if it was the best way for me. But if it wasn't monogamy, what else was there? When I started to look into it and what other options there were, I found that there were lots of people living lots of different styles and structures of relationships. It was just all in the shadows. And there was so much shame that I felt in wanting to explore different ways of being in relationship. I didn't feel like I could openly talk about it except with my very, very close friends, and hand-selected those friends who I felt would really accept me and allow me the space to just ask the questions. And I'm really forever grateful to those close friends who held me and said that it was okay to question and to learn really who I was and how I wanted to be in relationship. And with that, I want to talk about some different basic structures to give us a common space to come together in understanding. The first one I want to talk about is Soloamory. And this is where the main intimate relationship I have is with myself. The next one is the one that is mostly known and shown in society, and that is monogamy. My intimate relationship is with one other person. The next big group that I want to talk about is ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy. This is an umbrella term for the other two structures that I want to talk about. But it basically means non-monogamy chosen from a consensual place between partners. The other two structures that I want to talk about are open relationships. I define open relationships as I can have sexual experiences outside of my main intimate relationship if it is consensual between my partner and me. And the last one I'm going to touch on here is polyamory. And this is defined for the podcast as I have multiple loving, intimate relationships, and everyone has full knowledge of each other and gives consent. There are so many substructures in everything that I just talked about. So we'll go into each one of these in future podcasts, but those are the brief descriptions of the four kinds: soloamory, monogamy, open relationship, and polyamory. Now, we have to start somewhere when we're going into an exploration of a new concept or an idea. And knowledge about these structures is a great place to start your exploration of relationship structure diversity. I have been quite rebellious in my life in terms of my societal constructs. I've found myself rebelling against these kind of relationship labels. I've never liked being put in boxes, and they've always felt suffocating and restrictive. However, I think where these categories and labels find their value is by helping us find others who identify in the same way. This speaks to humanity's deep need to belong, to be seen, understood, and heard. When we label ourselves as monogamous or polyamorous, for example, we can find a whole group of people who understand what that experience is like. It helps us not to feel like an outcast or weird. It helps us feel a sense of community. On the other side of that, these labels can be restrictive when they, one, limit our sense of self, our ability to be our true selves in relationships, and two, when they put unattainable expectations on our relationships. So I think the key to going in and learning about these different relationship structures is to keep an open mind, to keep a level of flexibility, to understand all of them, and then see where maybe you feel as though you like to spend time by yourself, but you also really enjoy your monogamous relationship with your partner, and how you can honor both of those parts of yourself. Now, I hear people all the time say polyamory doesn't work or monogamy doesn't work. That all people lie in monogamy and that's just the way that it is. Or if you want to be alone, that's bad. There must be something wrong with you. And I just want to say that each of those relationship structures, soloamory, monogamy, open relationship, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, and all that that entails, they each have their wounded side. They all don't work at times, and they all work at times and are successful. And the reason and the foundation of is it going to be successful or is it not going to be successful is the relationship that you have with yourself. It's about doing your inner work, knowing yourself. And I say knowing yourself more intimately than you know anyone else and that anyone else knows you. You knowing yourself intimately brings awareness to your relationship. And with that awareness comes healing, comes the ability to make choices from a conscious place in your relationship. When you come to whatever structure you choose with that awareness, then the relationship, regardless of whether it lasts 2 years, 2 months, or 20 years, is a success because it is coming from your truth. the truth of who you are in any given moment of your relationship. And this is where we're going to go next in our discussion in the next episode. We're going to actually break down each of these relationship structures that I talked about today and look at what does the wounded side of that relationship look like and what could the healed perspective look like. Our goal is to get in the place of whatever we decide, whatever structure we decide in, that we come from that healed perspective, which leads to more joy and fulfillment. So I invite you to stay in the space of curiosity as we dive deeper into relationship diversity. Thank you for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are.